Admiral Zix Thor stood before the holographic display in the command center of the Centurion flagship Eclipse of Dominion. His long, spindly fingers traced the flickering blue outline of Earth, a tiny speck of dust hanging in the vastness of space. He stared at it with contempt, as though the very idea of it being a threat to his empire was a personal insult. "You're sure this is accurate?" he growled to his officer, a burly Centurion named Thrax who towered at his side. Thrax, whose body had been genetically enhanced for maximum intimidation, nodded without hesitation, his icy blue eyes scanning the data feed. "Yes, Admiral. Their weaponry is primitive, their space travel technology less than 100 years old, and they've never even seen a real war." "Then why do I get the feeling we're wasting our time?" Zix Thor's voice was low, filled with a barely contained fury. "The other species we've conquered, they were at least something. These humans can't possibly stand against the might of the Centurion Empire." Thrax shifted uneasily. "There's something strange about them. They've been unpredictable." Zix Thor's gaze sharpened, and the faintest trace of doubt crept into his heart. "What do you mean?" "We've seen their history," Thrax continued, his tone cautious. "They've fought wars with each other for centuries. Civilizations have risen and fallen under their feet. And yet, they persist. They don't stop. No matter what happens, they keep fighting." The Admiral scoffed. "Nonsense. A species that hasn't even figured out how to properly organize its society? They're a joke. A brief spark in the cosmic dark." He gestured sharply, and the hologram zoomed in on Earth's major cities, clusters of lights, scattered across the globe. Humanity's cities, crowded with chaos, greed, and an ever-burning need for advancement. None of it worthy of conquest. "Send them an ultimatum," Zix Thor ordered. "In 3 days, they must surrender, or we will wipe them off the map. Their insignificant resistance will be crushed beneath our feet." Thrax hesitated, glancing at the Admiral with a flicker of uncertainty. "Admiral, are you sure they'll?" "I'm sure," Zix Thor interrupted, his voice cold. "The Centurion Empire does not lose." With a final swipe, Zix Thor dismissed the meeting, turning to survey the massive view of the stars beyond the flagship's observation window. The emptiness of space stretched out before him, silent, infinite, and untouched. Just like Earth would soon be. Meanwhile, light years away, Commander Alexis Chen stared at the blinking red message on her holographic desk console. "Centurion Empire, surrender or face total annihilation." The words seemed absurd, even in a universe where galactic warfare was an ongoing reality. Earth? Annihilated? The thought was laughable. She leaned back in her chair and tapped a finger against her chin thoughtfully. 3 days, huh? That's an awful lot of time to not do anything. Her comm officer, Lieutenant Harper, raised an eyebrow. "Commander, they're serious. They've made it clear they'll destroy us if we don't comply." Alexis snorted. "And you believe them? You know how many messages we get like this every month? If we believed half of them, we'd be living in a crater by now." "True," Harper replied, glancing over the data from Centurion ships. "But their fleet, it's massive. And their weapons are—" "I know," Alexis interrupted, cutting him off. She didn't need to be told about the size of the Centurion fleet. Everyone in the galaxy knew. But it wasn't their fleet that worried her, it was their arrogance. "They've underestimated us, Harper," Alexis said, the corners of her mouth curling into a knowing smile. "I say we show them why humanity's reputation is what it is." Harper hesitated, uncertain whether the commander was serious or just making light of the situation. "You have a plan?" "More of a strategy," Alexis said, leaning forward and flicking on the display for her top team. "I want everyone on high alert. We're playing this by their rules, but on our terms. First thing, let's give them exactly what they want. Surrender. In fact, let's throw them a party." "A party?" Harper's voice cracked slightly, unsure if this was sarcasm or strategy. "Yep," Alexis replied, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "We're going to play along, get them thinking we're weak and foolish. While they're basking in their victory, we'll hit them where it hurts." Harper blinked. "And where's that?" Right in their overconfident, shiny armor, Alexis said, standing up and pacing. Get me Marina Rodriguez. It's time to make a statement. A very human statement. As Harper quickly relayed the message, Alexis sat back down, chuckling to herself. 3 days. She'd give them 3 days to laugh. And then they'd see what humanity was really capable of. Back aboard the Eclipse of Dominion, Admiral Zix Thor continued to brood over the projected timeline, his mind buzzing with strategies. We will destroy them swiftly, he muttered. The humans will fall like all the others. Yet, even as he spoke the words, the faintest feeling of unease tickled at the back of his mind, and he couldn't help but wonder, could these humans truly be so insignificant? Deep in the heart of space, the countdown had already begun. The Centurions had always been proud of their ancient traditions, particularly the ritual combat, a sacred trial that decided the fate of any species bold enough to challenge their empire. Their customs were as old as their interstellar dominion, and they had never failed to secure victory. So, when the challenge was issued to Earth, they were confident in their position. At least, until they realized who they were dealing with. Admiral Zix Thor leaned forward in the command center of the Eclipse of Dominion, his sharp, reptilian eyes narrowing. The holographic display of Earth glowed before him, shifting through images of a primitive yet resilient planet. The humans had accepted the challenge far too easily, and Thor was beginning to question their motives. Admiral, a voice crackled through the comms, pulling Zix from his thoughts. The humans have issued their champion. She is a woman. Zix raised an eyebrow, a mix of disdain and amusement coloring his face. The humans had one champion for their entire species? A female, no less? This was surely a mistake, one that would cost them dearly. Show me the data, Zix ordered. The display flickered and shifted to a live feed from Earth. There, standing in front of an ancient military base in Nevada, was a woman, short, stocky, wearing a bandana and what appeared to be an old military jacket. She was gnawing on a burrito as if she were about to take on a bear in hand-to-hand combat, not an entire interstellar empire. The Centurion officers in the room exchanged puzzled looks. One of them, a young tactician named Tia, leaned over and muttered, "She doesn't look like much." Zix's eyes remained fixed on the screen, watching as the human woman raised her eyes and flashed a grin that would have sent even the bravest of warriors reconsidering their life choices. "I don't care who they send. If they're all like this, we've already won," Zix said, though his voice betrayed a hint of uncertainty. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Alexis Chen stood with her arms crossed, watching the same feed. "She did say she'd be the best, didn't she?" Alexis muttered under her breath. Marina Rodriguez, Earth's chosen champion, stood before her, still holding the burrito. She was finishing the last bite and wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "Relax, Commander. I got this. It's like chess, right? Just a game, but with less thinking and more throwing people into walls." Alexis raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a tight smile. "I really hope that's not your strategy. Because the last time you tried that, you broke our entire surveillance satellite." Details, Marina said, waving her off. She flicked a few crumbs from her jacket and adjusted her bandana. "What's the worst that can happen? They show up with a bigger gun, and I'll just throw a tire at them." Alexis took a deep breath, already bracing herself for the inevitable chaos that would ensue. If there was one thing Marina was good at, it was making everything ridiculously unpredictable. Back on the Eclipse of Dominion, Zix Thor was preparing for the upcoming fight. His thoughts were interrupted by a transmission. The human champion wanted to send a representative to discuss the rules of combat. Zix Thor's eyes narrowed. Rules? He had expected the humans to beg for mercy, not want to negotiate the details of a centuries-old tradition. But, ever the strategist, he decided to entertain them. A few minutes later, a human envoy appeared on the hollow screen. Alexis stood confidently before Zix Thor, arms crossed, exuding the same calm air that had gotten her this far in her military career. "We understand the importance of your ritual combat," she said, her tone measured. "But before we proceed, we need to clear up a few things. You see, Marina's been training for 3 days. I'm not sure if your customs account for that, but she's not exactly familiar with your rules. Zix Thor scowled. 3 days? They had been preparing for this moment for centuries. You will not make a mockery of our customs, Commander, Zix growled, his voice low and dangerous. Oh, I'm not mocking anything, Alexis said, her smile never faltering. I just need to know, does the combat involve a giant, armored colossus, or is it more like, say, a one-on-one with some spicy food and a dance-off? Zix blinked, momentarily stunned. What? Because, Marina might have accidentally scheduled a taco-eating contest before the match. It could throw her off balance, Alexis added, clearly enjoying the Admiral's discomfort. Zix sputtered. Taco-eating contest? This is no time for jokes, he bellowed. The fate of your species is at stake. Alexis leaned closer to the screen. We've got 3 days, Zix. 3 days, just a heads up, no time for formalities. You'll find that humans like to keep things interesting. And with that, the transmission cut off. Back in the human camp, Marina gave a thumbs up to Alexis, who rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a grin. Well, that went well. Now, about those tacos. The Centurion envoy landed in a sterile, gleaming government complex located just outside New York City. Their ship, the Scepter of Dominion, was a monument of chrome and sharp edges, its gleaming surface almost too perfect to be real. Zix Thor, Admiral of the Centurion forces, had never seen a human city up close. He had imagined towering spires of metal, glittering with technological advancements. Instead, he saw sprawling streets littered with food carts, neon signs flashing bizarre slogans like "World's Best Pizza," now with extra cheese, and the occasional street performer in a chicken suit holding a sign that read "Will dance for space credits." Zix's three-eyed head tilted in confusion. This is Earth? He almost expected to see some kind of heavy industrial machinery lurking beneath the chaos. But no! What he saw instead was humanity's peculiar brand of disarray, and it filled him with a growing sense of unease. Welcome to Earth, esteemed emissaries, Alexis Chen's voice crackled over the comms from the ground. We hope you enjoy your stay. We've arranged a full tour of our most important facilities. Zix blinked his 3 eyes. Important facilities? I thought your species had, at most, a few hundred years of space exploration. What are you going to show us? Your collection of, what did you call them, arcade games? Arcade games? Alexis's voice was sweet but edged with amusement. Sure. But trust me, that's just the tip of the iceberg. You're in for a treat. Inside the gleaming glass doors of Earth's United Nations headquarters, the Centurion delegation was escorted by a team of human diplomats. Zix's eyes darted suspiciously around, taking in the chaotic hustle of what he now realized was Earth's most revered institution. The human diplomats were arguing over the merits of offering each species the universal translator device that worked off Wi-Fi versus using an encrypted frequency. Some of them were half-dressed in their business attire, sleeves rolled up, as if they'd been debating the issue for days. Why are they still talking? Zix muttered to his aide, his voice laced with discomfort. Ah, this is normal, the aide responded, attempting to match the Centurion's pace as they walked down the hall. Humans are very expressive. What a waste of time, Zix muttered. We should be showing them the might of our forces. And then, it happened. A human diplomat with wild, unkempt hair, wearing a shirt that read "Peace out," Earth walked up to Zix, grinning. He didn't bow or acknowledge the alien's superior position. Instead, he stuck out his hand for a handshake. Hey, welcome to Earth, big guy. The human said, too casually for Zix's comfort. I'm Bob, and you're about to see why we humans are so cool. Zix froze, staring at the extended hand as if it were a weapon. What is this gesture? Shake it! It's like a friendly way of saying hello, Bob said. You don't have to, though. Just a thing we do. Zix's mind raced. He'd been briefed on the concept of handshakes, human diplomacy, human customs. But he wasn't ready for this. I do not engage in such frivolities. Zix turned sharply, flicking his tail in exasperation, and stalked toward the nearest window. He looked out, seeing, of all things, an ice cream truck selling colorful cones. "Is this your greatest weapon?" he muttered. "Some frozen dairy? 1,000 years of spacefaring, in this?" But just as he was about to growl at the absurdity, a voice cut through his thoughts. "Oh, I see. You're not the handshake type, huh?" Bob chuckled, completely unfazed. "Okay, how about this?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, wrapped in a napkin. "I've got a delicious Earth snack here. Want to try?" Bob waved the item in front of Zix. "Don't worry, no weird stuff. Just a bag of chips." "A what?" Zix recoiled. "Is this some kind of bomb?" "Nope, not a bomb. Just chips. The kind of chips that could make your worst day a little better." Bob grinned, opening the bag and offering it again, as if it were a rare treasure. Zix's eyes narrowed. "I do not consume chips," he spat the word out as though it were some kind of disgusting alien substance. But then, curiosity gnawed at him. The human seemed genuinely excited, and Zix's resolve wavered. He knew little of human culture but had learned one thing: humans did not lie about food. With a disdainful flick of his hand, he snatched a chip from the bag. The silence stretched for a moment before he brought it to his mouth. A strange, savory sensation burst in his mouth, a riot of flavors he couldn't quite identify, yet undeniably potent. For a moment, Zix paused, dazed by the unexpected joy of the experience. Bob, sensing victory, grinned. "Told you! I call that sour cream and onion, but we've got like 1,000 flavors. You should try barbecue next." Zix's 3 eyes blinked in rapid succession. He shook his head, a mix of confusion and reluctant admiration. "This? I do not understand your species," he muttered, almost to himself. "And yet, this chip is delightful." Bob gave him a knowing look. "Yeah, that's what I thought. Welcome to Earth." By the end of the meeting, the Centurions were thoroughly confused. They had come expecting to see a planet of fear-stricken, easy-to-manipulate species. Instead, they encountered diplomats arguing over the proper method of brewing coffee, cities that seemed built on chaos rather than order, and, worst of all, humans who were entirely unfazed by the impending invasion. As they boarded the Scepter of Dominion to return to their ship, Zix looked at his aide, his mind spinning. "Are they always like this?" he asked. The aide nodded. "Yes, sir. They are unpredictable." Zix let out a long, frustrated sigh. "We are never doing this again." The Centurions had a fleet of polished dreadnoughts. Massive, gleaming starships that exuded power, each one an embodiment of their empire's might. These ships were designed for intimidation, with towering plasma cannons and hulls that could withstand the heaviest bombardments. As they arrived at the designated arena station, the Centurion soldiers stood tall in their dark uniforms, scanning the human fleet with condescending looks. There was no mistaking their judgment. These humans were outclassed, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. The Centurions had no doubt they would crush the so-called champions of Earth in a matter of hours. But what greeted them as they arrived at the arena station was something they hadn't expected. It was a motley collection of ships, none of them even remotely matching the Centurion's grandeur. The first to catch their eye was the stealthy Dung Beetle, a retrofitted cargo ship painted in bright neon colors with a giant inflatable duck on top. The ship's engines sputtered and hummed like a broken-down lawnmower, its outer hull covered in patches of various stickers, including one that read, "My other ship is a space yacht." Then there was the Lucky Star, a repurposed cruise liner with deck chairs strapped onto the outside. It had string lights hanging from every port, and the unmistakable aroma of fried food wafted through the air. Not exactly the kind of vessel the Centurions had expected to face in battle. Are you kidding me?" Admiral Zix muttered, clenching his fists so tightly that his fingers turned white. He couldn't comprehend how Earth had managed to cobble together such a fleet. On the other side, Earth's fleet was assembled on the hangar bay, brimming with chaotic, joyful energy. Marina Mad Dog Rodriguez stood near the front, chomping on a burrito, her arms folded, her grin wide. She was late, of course, But not because she was worried. She was just having lunch. "I thought you'd be here sooner," Alexis Chen called out from across the room, arms crossed with a knowing smile. "This is kind of a big deal, you know?" Marina wiped her mouth and shrugged. "It's a challenge, not a contest." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Besides, I've already got a strategy. Watch this." With that, she tossed the rest of her burrito into the air and shot a quick text on her tablet. "Just gotta finalize the logistics." Logistics. Alexis raised an eyebrow. Marina had once trained her dog to deliver pizza. She was, for all intents and purposes, a mad genius when it came to the unexpected. "All right, team," Alexis called, rallying the troops. "You know the plan. Pretend we're all totally unprepared. Keep things messy. But when it's time to strike, strike fast. And remember, don't let them figure out we're messing with them." Behind them, the Centurions had begun to disembark, their towering forms moving like a shadow of doom. They wore exosuits that gleamed with precision. Their weapons glinted menacingly. But the humans weren't intimidated. If anything, they were quietly giggling among themselves. The Centurions moved to the battle arena, setting up a series of weapon stations, testing plasma cannons, and running simulations. They thought they were in control. They thought this would be another easy conquest. But as the countdown began, something strange was happening. Marina wasn't anywhere near the stealthy dung beetle. Instead, she was casually strolling toward the arena's control room, waving at some engineers who were fiddling with the starship's control panel. In the blink of an eye, she had swapped out half the navigational controls for Yo-Yo, one of Earth's most ridiculous toys. She snickered to herself as she skipped away. "Are you serious right now?" muttered one of the Centurions, watching her antics from the observation deck. "This is the champion?" Marina, of course, was already 10 steps ahead. She'd spent the last several hours covertly turning the ship's internal systems into a labyrinth of distractions, balloons, confetti cannons, and even a prank alarm that went off every 10 minutes. She was going to show the Centurions that, while they had brute force, they were sorely lacking in imagination. The Centurions were preparing their weapons, their mindsets focused. Zixtor paced, glancing at his holoscreen, already visualizing their victory. The human champion didn't even have a real ship. She was going to be destroyed. But Marina wasn't fighting in a ship. She wasn't even using traditional weapons. Her arsenal? Unexpectedness. She ran toward the arena's entrance, her laugh echoing through the space, startling the Centurions. "Here we go," she thought, grinning wider than ever. She was about to show the galaxy why humans weren't just survivors, but why they were the most terrifying species in the universe. Before Zixtor could react, Marina had pulled out a fire extinguisher, a random assortment of confetti grenades, and, just for good measure, an industrial-strength super soaker filled with green dye. "Ready or not," she called out, and the first spray of green hit one of the Centurion exosuits. The soldiers turned, confused, furious, and then Marina slammed into them like a hurricane, leaving chaos in her wake. "Well," Alexis said, watching the scene unfold. "This is going better than expected." The Centurions were too stunned to comprehend what was happening. They'd been expecting brute force, not disorienting chaos. Marina had them right where she wanted them, and they didn't even know it. "Let's get this over with," Alexis murmured, setting her comms to a higher frequency. This was just getting started. The arena was a spectacle, an immense floating platform orbiting a dead moon. The Centurion Empire's champions stood in their towering glory, their sleek, black armor glistening under the artificial lights, while the Earthlings, well, they looked like they'd wandered in from a backyard barbecue. Marina Mad Dog Rodriguez stood out like a sore thumb among the sea of intimidating alien titans. She was all muscle, yes, but also a little underdressed. She wore no body armor, just a plain Earth t-shirt, cargo shorts, and a pair of worn-out sneakers that had seen better days. And in her hand, she casually twirled a rubber chicken. Her smirk was that of someone who knew they'd already won, without even trying. The Centurion champion, a creature known only as Raxter, was an imposing figure. 8 feet of genetically engineered muscle, its skin a deep, almost metallic shade of crimson, and its eyes glowing with an intensity that made even seasoned soldiers quiver. Raxter wielded a weapon, some kind of plasma blade that crackled with deadly energy. The crowd of Centurion soldiers cheered as their champion flexed, testing the weight of the blade with a loud crack. "Raxter will crush them," Zixthor, the admiral of the fleet, muttered under his breath as he stood at the edge of the observation deck, his eyes locked on the human champion. This should be over in seconds. But there was one thing Zixthor didn't count on: Marina was human. As the buzzer sounded, signaling the start of the fight, Marina didn't move immediately. Instead, she took a slow, exaggerated look around the arena, as if inspecting the surroundings. She squinted at a sign overhead that read "Victory through Honor." "Did they really have to put that there?" she muttered to herself. "That's so dramatic." She raised her voice, loud enough for the entire stadium to hear. "You know, I think I left my keys in the locker room. Mind if I go grab them real quick?" The crowd fell silent, unsure of whether she was joking or just plain crazy. Raxter, meanwhile, narrowed his glowing eyes and brandished his plasma blade, ready to strike. Zixthor looked as if he was about to explode with anger. He had ordered his forces to prepare for a display of strength, and this human was mocking their customs. Marina didn't care. She let the silence linger for just a moment longer, before finally twisting her body with a speed that defied the laws of physics for her appearance. A sudden movement, a blur, really, and in one smooth motion, she ducked under Raxter's first strike, using his over-exaggerated swing as a perch to launch herself at the creature's side. She didn't come at him with fancy moves or sophisticated techniques. She came at him like a wrecking ball. A loud wham sounded as her sneakers collided with his midsection, pushing the 8-foot giant a step back. Raxter staggered, his weapon clashing harmlessly against the ground. The audience gasped. "Who?" Marina called out, wiping an imaginary bead of sweat from her forehead. "Is that all you got?" Raxter growled, his alien voice rumbling through the stadium, but Marina had already darted out of range, easily slipping behind him. The Centurion champion swung his plasma blade in a wide arc, only to meet nothing but empty air. Marina, meanwhile, had grabbed something from her belt. Something bright orange. "Time for a little surprise," she grinned, holding up the object, a can of spray foam insulation. She squeezed the trigger and blasted it at Raxter's face. The foam expanded rapidly, covering his eyes and mouth. For a split second, Raxter froze, confused and disoriented. The audience erupted in shocked laughter. How could a human think this would work? But what they didn't realize was that Marina wasn't finished yet. She tossed the foam can aside and sprinted toward the Centurion's feet. She slid under his legs, smacking him in the knee with a baseball bat she pulled out from thin air. "Home run," she yelled, as Raxter stumbled and fell to one knee with a loud crash, his massive body struggling to stay upright. The crowd was now in full shock mode, their confident jeers fading into hushed whispers. Zixthor's face was turning a deep shade of red, as though his very pride was being stripped away. He had expected a battle of strength, of power. Instead, he was witnessing a human dancing around his champion like a child on a sugar high. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was humiliating. Raxter, furious now, tore the foam from his face and swung his weapon again, but Marina had already anticipated this. She dived into a roll, narrowly missing the plasma blade as it sliced through the air, the intense heat brushing her skin. She popped up with a giant grin. "Bet you didn't see that coming," she taunted. "I've had worse in my gym class." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, unassuming water balloon. Without hesitation, she hurled it at Raxter's head. It burst upon impact, drenching him with water, instantly short-circuiting his enhanced reflexes and causing a malfunction in his neural implant. Raxter paused, blinking, trying to comprehend what had just happened. And as he did, Marina took the opportunity to leap onto his back, wrapping her legs around his waist. "Tag, you're it," she whispered, slapping him lightly on the shoulder. With a final, dramatic move, she knocked Raxter off balance, sending him crashing to the ground, where he lay dazed. The arena fell silent. The buzzer sounded again, and this time, it wasn't for a new round. It was for victory. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer boomed over the loudspeakers, we have a winner. The champion of Earth, Marina Mad Dog Rodriguez. The Centurion sat in stunned silence. The human had done it. And she hadn't done it through strength or strategy, but by sheer unpredictability, audacity, and the willingness to never, ever take herself seriously. Marina hopped off Raxter's back, adjusted her t-shirt, and waved to the crowd. "Anybody up for a post-fight snack?" she asked, her voice carrying a grin. The eclipse of Dominion drifted in the cold void of space, a hulking mass of weaponized might and ancient power. Zixtor stood on the bridge, his sharp gaze fixed on the holographic display before him. The defeated image of Marina Rodriguez, human champion, conqueror of the Centurion champion, flickered like a ghost. His fists were clenched tight around the control console, his knuckles white against the dark metal. How could this happen? He thought, each pulse of frustration hammering in his chest. The Centurion Empire, a force feared across countless star systems, had been humiliated by a human. A human. The thought tasted like ashes in his mouth. "Admiral," a voice behind him broke through his dark reverie. Sub-Commander Kaler, a by-the-book Centurion officer, stepped forward, his armored form a stark contrast to the casual garb of Zixtor's robes. His voice held a mixture of pity and nervousness. "You need to face the High Council. You failed." Zixtor's red eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Kaler thought the Admiral might vaporize him with a thought. The Centurion leader was capable of such feats, but his anger was never simple, more like a storm, swirling, brooding. "Fail?" Zixtor sneered, turning slowly toward Kaler. "We did not fail, Sub-Commander. We were tricked. These humans, they don't fight like anyone else. I expected honor, power, strategy. What we got was a joke." Kaler stepped back, unsure if Zixtor was speaking to him or to the walls of the ship. "They don't fight like anyone else." In a meeting room beneath the flagship, Earth's Commander Alexis Chen was on a video call, smiling broadly, a glass of sparkling water in her hand. Marina sat across from her, picking her teeth with the edge of her victory trophy, a bronze statue of a Centurion, its head cracked and its body bent at an impossible angle. "Let's just say I've never had a healthier fight," Marina chuckled, her arms crossed in front of her chest. Bananas, fire extinguishers, hoverboards. Who knew that was the secret to victory? Alexis rolled her eyes, but her lips curled upward. "You didn't actually think they were going to just sit there and take it, did you?" Marina shrugged. "You're right. I was expecting them to shoot at me with lasers, but the water balloons worked just fine." Alexis tapped her fingers on the console. "You know, this whole thing's gonna make Earth a household name across the galaxy. We'll be getting diplomatic envoys from every corner. And maybe some will try to test us, but," she leaned in, her smile widening. "It's going to take a lot to convince anyone to fight us now." "Right," Marina said, nodding. "Who'd want to face a species that throws glitter bombs and tricks their enemies with duct tape?" As if on cue, the transmission from the Centurion Empire blinked to life. It was Zixtor. His face, usually stern and regal, was twisted into something resembling pain, a rare and peculiar sight for any Centurion. "Commander Alexis Chen," he growled, voice low and filled with discontent. "I hope you and your champion are satisfied. You've destroyed our honor and brought shame upon our empire." Alexis crossed her arms. "We didn't mean to destroy your honor," she said, leaning back in her chair, as if this were all just another pleasant chat. "We just showed you what Earth's made of. Maybe you should have done some research before issuing a challenge." Zixtor's eyes narrowed. "You played us for fools. You made a mockery of our sacred combat tradition." "Well, if we're being honest," Alexis said with a mischievous grin, "your sacred combat tradition is a bit predictable, don't you think? I mean, 8-foot plasma-wielding behemoth versus a woman with a squirt gun? The outcome was practically written in the stars." Zixtor's brow twitched, his breath sharp. "You humans," he held up a hand, clearly struggling to find words. "We'll never challenge Earth again. You have," he paused, trying to control his voice. "You have ruined us." "I'll take that as a compliment," Alexis said, clearly enjoying every second of this. "But hey, If you want to rebuild your honor, there's always karaoke night. I hear it's a great way to let off steam. Marina snorted. Oh, don't tempt me. I might just take over the galaxy with a microphone. Zixthor's image flickered briefly, his expression unreadable. Goodbye, Commander Chen, he muttered, before the transmission abruptly cut off. The room fell silent for a moment. Marina leaned back, staring at the holographic screen as it faded into darkness. Do you think they'll ever come back? Marina asked, a flicker of genuine curiosity in her voice. No, Alexis said with a sly smile. And if they do, they'll be so paranoid about us that they'll be too busy drinking their own overpriced coffee to bother us. Marina chuckled. Well, that's good to know. But on the off chance they do come around, just tell them to bring some duct tape. And with that, they both laughed, fully aware that Earth's reputation had just gone from underestimated to legendary. But for all the triumph, there was one thing Alexis knew for certain: no one would ever challenge humanity again. And, more importantly, no one would ever take themselves too seriously in front of humans again. At least not without duct tape. The week after the ritual combat debacle, Earth began to feel the ripples of its new, unexpected reputation. News of the humans' outrageous victory over the Centurion Empire had spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Alien species from neighboring systems who had never even heard of Earth were now inquiring about humanity. And the stories? They were growing, evolving, into something mythic. At the United Earth Coalition's Central Command, a fresh transmission buzzed across the holoconsole, snapping Alexis Chen out of her late-night coffee-induced stupor. The request was from the Zentari Syndicate, a notorious conglomerate of pirate clans operating along the outer rim of the galaxy. I told you, Commander, said Lieutenant McFarlane, leaning over her shoulder. They want to know how to deal with humans. Deal? Alexis arched an eyebrow. She read the transmission aloud. We have heard the terrifying stories of the Mad Dog. Please advise us on how to approach humanity without provoking them. Should we send gifts or negotiate terms? She snorted, covering her face in disbelief. Gifts? We're not running a flea market. What's next? A puppy in a bow tie? McFarlane frowned. It's becoming a real problem. Earth's reputation is spreading, and it's not just the Centurions. The Zentari, the Rigel Alliance, they've all heard about Marina's little show. Show? Alexis scoffed. It was a battle. She paused, glancing at the transmission scrolling across the screen. I mean, yeah, technically, it was weird, but we won, didn't we? The room was still buzzing with transmissions from galactic powers far and wide, some curious, others nervous. Humans were becoming something else in the eyes of the galaxy. A novelty at best. A threat at worst. In the wake of the Centurions' humiliating defeat, every spacefaring species was now wary of humanity's eccentricity. Meanwhile, far from Earth, on the Centurion flagship Eclipse of Dominion, Admiral Zixthor was pacing in his personal chambers, his hands balled into fists. His once pristine uniform was slightly askew, his face a mask of frustration and confusion. Zix, we must act, came the voice of his second-in-command, Tnak, who appeared on the comm screen, his large mandibles twitching nervously. The galaxy is buzzing about these humans, about her, the Mad Dog. We cannot ignore them any longer. I'm not ignoring them, Zix snapped, running his hands through his hair. I just don't understand it. How does a species so inefficient win? He spat out the word as if it were a foul taste in his mouth. Marina Rodriguez should have been crushed. We trained our best. We did everything by the book. Tanaka's multiple eyes blinked. Perhaps it is their unpredictability. A strength we can't anticipate. We've never faced anything like them. Zix scowled. It's not just her. It's them. These humans, half of them don't even follow any kind of order. They eat with their hands, they talk while they fight, they sing while they fight. And yet they win. This makes no sense. Back on Earth, Marina Mad Dog Rodriguez was relaxing in a makeshift command center on a tropical beach, because why not? The Victory Karaoke Night had turned into a 3-day-long festival of victory shots and exaggerated stories of the battle. In the middle of it all, Marina sat back, wearing a tank top that read "Mad dogs don't bark, they bite," and casually scrolling through the galactic news feeds. She chuckled to herself. "They're still talking about me, huh?" "Oh, they're terrified of you, Marina," Alexis remarked, sitting beside her with a cold drink in hand. "You've become a galactic legend." "A legend, huh?" Marina smirked, taking another sip. "This is what happens when you teach an 8-foot alien how to dance with a fire extinguisher. We're not letting that one go, are we?" Alexis shook her head, grinning. "Anyway, I've got another one here from the Centauri Syndicate. They want to know how to deal with humans. Seems like they've been hearing rumors about your, combat style." Marina burst out laughing, nearly spitting out her drink. "Oh, come on. You mean, they're scared of me? I'm a walking disaster." "Well, you've certainly left your mark," Alexis said dryly. "Some of these stories sound like they were made up by someone who's never seen a human in their life." She read aloud from one of the transmissions. "The mad dog can summon fire from the heavens. She swings weapons of mass destruction with the force of 1,000 storms. Beware her unrelenting fury." "Ha!" Marina slapped her knee, howling. "That's rich. 1,000 storms?" I threw a bucket of water in the guy's face. He slipped on a banana peel. She paused, taking a moment to appreciate her growing fame. "Well, I'm not terrifying." Alexis raised her drink. To the mad dog, the galaxy's new nightmare. As the evening wore on, humans continued to bask in their absurdity, mixing their newfound power with humor and irreverence. The universe may have been taking them seriously, but the humans of Earth had their own way of dealing with the situation. They weren't looking for fame or glory, just a little recognition that they were no longer to be underestimated. Across the galaxy, the tales of the mad dog would live on, passed from species to species, slowly morphing into something more than truth. In some corners, she was already a myth, a legend of absurdity and might. And the best part? Earth wasn't done yet. "Hey, Alexis, think we could get a commercial deal with the Centauri?" Marina asked, grinning. "We could sell Mad Dog merch. It'd be huge." Alexis raised her glass. "Let's make a call."